You know, the most important lesson I've learned as a commentator, and I've done it a lot you might have noticed it this year in particular. One of the big things that I've noticed this year as a commentator, the most important thing you can do is be honest about your limits, right? And be honest about thanking Kingdom Key 92 for the 10 smackaroonies. Thanks very much for the $10. You have to be honest about your limits and what you can do, right? This year, I'm like, I'm just going to focus on the things that I'm really interested in doing and good at. I feel like the further you stray from that, just the worse it always is, right? Like you just have to focus on what you're good at. So often, I feel like especially this happens with Street Fighter commentary where every commentator's like, I could do Street Fighter, no problem. And I listen to it and I'm like, oh, it just hurts my soul. I'm like, man. But I think overall, Street Fighter commentary, it's one of those games that frustrates me when I listen to it more than almost any other game. Because there's like a weird mindset about the game where most people are like, because Street Fighter 5 is more simple than the other Street Fighters, I don't really have to study it or know much about it. I can just commentate it without really giving a fuck. And that happens a lot, which is like an unfortunate like repercussion of the way people think about the game, right? When it comes to commentary, the closer you stick to your specialty, I feel like the better you'll always do, right? There is a weird perception in fighting games currently that being a multi-game commentator is necessary to succeed. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think you have the most success and people notice your work the most when you just stick to your specialty and you kill it. You know what I mean? The further you stray from that, the more obvious it is that A, you're not that interested in what you're commentating, and B, you don't know that much about it. Right? That happens, especially I feel like lots of commentators, when they're getting close to hitting their like, peak, like this guy is killing it at their game, then they start to be like, oh shit, if I do a bunch of other games, people will invite me to more events. So then they start jumping around, and then they just like, I just start listening, and it frustrates me because I think that when you spread yourself out like that, your main game's commentary tends to get worse, but also you're, instead of commentating one game or two games or three games like very well, you're now commentating like 5 games at like a very like, all right, I guess, kind of level. You know what I mean? And that to me is very frustrating because it's hard for me to like hear somebody who's super amazing at one game and then they go to another game and they don't do a great job. It affects my perception of what I think about their commentary in general. Would I commentate other games? If I was interested in them, there's a few games that I'm kind of like about, but I spread out. Yeah, but this year, what did I really commentate, right? It was mostly Dragon Ball and Street Fighter. There was occasionally dips into the other games that I'm interested in, but 95% of the year, I commentated Dragon Ball and Street Fighter, and I did some Tekken, which is probably my most watched fighting game of the year. But this year, I did way less Tekken than last year. And the reason is because last year, Tekken was like, it was just kind of, it like came out and like, there's a lot of people who were like, all right, like, sort of interested in the game. And I was like a good person to be like, hey, what the fuck's happening? Because I had followed the game through all the Wizard World series, and I was like familiar with Tekken 7, so I was like a good transitional commentator for when the game came out. But these days, like, I let the professionals handle it, right? I just let the professionals handle it because there's so many good Tekken commentators who are endemic to the scene that would do a much better job than I would. So unless I have to do it, or like there's like, nobody around to cover it or something, I love the game and I'd like to commentate it, but there's better people than me to do it. What's a game I would not commentate? A fighting game? It's a game I didn't know very well. So, like, I wouldn't commentate BlazBlue. I wouldn't, I wouldn't sign up for an event and be like, I'd like to commentate. Like, I'll take one BlazBlue to go, sir. Like, I don't know very much about BlazBlue, so I wouldn't want to commentate it. Any game that I'm just not interested in, like, playing or, competing in, then that's what I wouldn't want to commentate. I think BlazBlue is tight, and I watch it a lot, but I wouldn't want to commentate it. Even, like, Eunice, which I think is super dope, I wouldn't commentate it because I don't know that much about it, right? If I have to, and nobody else is around or something, maybe. But in these days, there's always somebody around that knows the game and would be interested in commentating it, and I'd rather have them get a spot. Even though the stream chat's going to be like, where's Yipes? Where's Sajam? Where's Tasty Steve? Like, new people have to be able to do what they need to do, right? Let them do the job. Let them do their jobs. And you may not like them now, but if you give them a little bit of time, they're going to improve. It's just sort of natural. I think Tekken, where's Steve taste? I think Tekken overall, in terms of fighting game commentary, has the best commentators, to be honest with you. I think their spread of commentators is the strongest overall group of commentators, and they do so many different games. MYK has always been great. You know what really frustrates me is that MYK hasn't done any Dragon Ball commentary. A, he watches and plays the game a lot, and B, he be fucking perfect for Dragon Ball. You know how hype that guy gets? Even the YouTube monsters would love MYK, and they don't like anything. Old Wins and I Fights is carried by Tekken commentators? Of course. The Tekken commentators are great. Like, if you think about the Tekken commentators, MYK, Eris, Rip, Rixta, and Steve. I'll count Steve, since that he does mostly Tekken, right? Even though, like, previously, years past, I would have maybe thought about him as a Guilty Gear commentator or something, I guess. But Tekken, they're all so good, and they're all very versatile. Like, Eris does NRS games, Rip does all kinds of shit. He does mobile games, he does PUBG, he does all kinds of shit. MYK should be doing Dragon Ball, but he has done some NRS games, like Rixta does NRS games. Sammy is weird because I still think about Sammy as a Guilty Gear commentator. Oh yeah, Markman too. Markman's a beast, and what I love about Markman is that Markman only does the games that he's good at. Because he could go and do any other fighting game and be good at it, because he's just that good of a commentator. But also, we were talking about Wednesday Night Fights commentators, and Mark is from SD, so it's a little far, right? I like Eris's NRS commentary is so good because he has, like, his perspective on the game is really great, right? It's just he has a funny kind of goofy perspective, and I think those games are campy. You know what I mean? Like, they're very, like, goofy. They don't take themselves that seriously. They're fun. That's what the thing about NRS game, particularly MK, which is what he usually does, right? MK is a campy franchise. Like, it's about people getting fucking ripped in half and shit, and, like, fucking the whoopsie uppercut. Like, MK is a, you know, it's gruesome, but it's also pretty funny. And that's what I like about it. I think he's good on that game for that. Oh, yeah, Okazumi. Okizambuni. This guy, Eris, cracks me up.